member of a community of interdependent parts. The land ethic simply enlarges the boundaries of the community to include soils, waters, plants, and animals, or collectively, the land.
The land ethic is a result of understanding the interrelationships of the natural system. It's not something that Dad all of a sudden realized. It took him a lifetime to understand how interrelated we are with the natural system. And never did we have perspective on this until we all finally grew up.
Here, on a once-abandoned farm in the Sand Counties of central Wisconsin, the Leopold family made their own connection to the land. Since the publication of Leopold's book, A Sand County Almanac, this place has come to symbolize the effort to build a healthier relationship between people and nature.
And now, all these years later, you get to see people coming from all over the world to visit.
Welcome. Glad to see you.
Not all trees are created free and equal. Where a white pine and a red birch are crowding each
I
other.
love all trees, but I am in love with pines.
And become scarce. Perhaps Himalayas
This effective is an extension of ethics.
It's astonishing to me and exciting to see how the shack has attracted people. My father would be absolutely amazed.
And the amazing thing is, after all these years, the interest in Leopold just continues to grow. You're this fellow who died in 1948, 60 years ago, and yet he is still read as a contemporary because his ideas are still not only so current, they're still so far ahead of us.
It has taken, 40, 50, or 60 years for us to catch up with the very clear meanings of the words that he was writing, in some cases in the late 20s, certainly through the 30s and the 40s.
What I now refer to as the Holy Trinity are Henry David Thoreau, John Muir, and Aldo Leopold as the giants on whose shoulders we stand.
We have lost sight of so much magic in the land, spiritual values. So it is time, certainly, to construct or reconstruct an ethic.
And even though he used the language land ethic, he was really talking about an earth ethic. And that earth ethic is as relevant today, more relevant today than it has ever been before.
Leopold was a forester and a scientist, a teacher and a writer. But above all, he was a careful and deeply curious observer of the natural world.
Dad took phenological records. He was recording the natural events of the season, the first blooming of plants, the arrival of birds, and so forth. And so, here am I, age 91. Guess what I'm doing? I'm keeping phenological records. I keep track of about 350 items, which really is one way of monitoring climate change. It's a very, very critical time, and keeping phenological records is not only a great sport, but it does give us an idea of monitoring the changes in the climate.
Leopold did not know about climate change or the other pressing conservation issues we now face on a global scale. He did, however, observe firsthand the fundamental changes taking place on the American landscape during his boyhood in the late 1800s. Railroads were opening the West. The prairies of the Midwest were being plowed up. The pine forests of the Lake States were being cut over, with the timber floated downriver and carried by rail to build the country.
Man always kills the thing he loves, and so we, the pioneers, have killed our wilderness. Some say we had to. Be that as it may, I am glad I shall never be young without wild country to be young in.
Leopold was born in 1887, here along the Mississippi River in Burlington, Iowa, where the railroad and the river, the two great axes of American development, came came together.
Aldo was raised in this environment here where there was plenty of opportunity for wandering around and in experiencing things and in discovering things. But that was just half of it. The other half was that he had parents that pushed him out there, encouraged him to go out there and use that youthful imagination.
Aldo Leopold's mother, Clara, encouraged his observational skills, his writing, and his aesthetic sense. She was a great appreciator of the opera. It was one of her passions in life. And because binoculars were not so easily available for birdwatching at that point in history, Aldo borrowed her opera glasses. That was his first set of binoculars.
At a very early age, Aldo was out here in the yard monitoring in his journals 13 different wren nests in this yard, which is a remarkable thing for an 11-year-old.
He must have really picked that up from his father, others in the family. Aldo's father, Carl, he was a conservationist before there was such a thing as the conservation movement. Carl loved the outdoors. He loved to hunt. He loved to fish. He loved bringing his children into contact with that world. And as Aldo grew up as the oldest son in the family, Carl was the one who really taught him that what you do in the outdoors reflects your set of ethics, your sense of responsibility for the world that you exist in. It was Carl who helped to imbue his son with this ethic that would grow over decades into what we now call the land ethic.
Well, you guys are going to be in charge someday, so it's our jobs here to teach you guys why this is so important.
Our goal is to help children develop first-hand experiences with nature and a long-term appreciation of nature. So we hope to have students inspired by Leopold's land ethic the way that he was inspired.
It can seem like a long way from a Sand County Almanac published back in 1949 to the work you're doing here, but there really is an important connection, isn't there?
The land ethic is alive and well in South Chicago.
Welcome to University of the Air.
Our guest is Kurt Miney.
Thank you so much for having me.
You know, I saw Aldo Leopold's birth date of 1887, and it came as sort of a shock just because he seems such a modern figure. Tell us about your sense of Leopold and his place in history.
The aspect of Leopold that makes him unique in our history is how he connects us across those generations. Leopold came of age during the first wave of conservation in the early 1900s. In his career, he broadened conservation to embrace new fields of wildland protection, wildlife management, watershed restoration. His writings were to inspire the environmental movement, and now we're moving into a new phase. We don't know what this next, maybe post-environmentalism phase is going to be or what it's becoming, but Leopold is still right there in the middle.
I think Aldo Leopold is the philosopher who stands between conservation and the modern environmental movement.
I think he is perhaps the fundamental guiding light in development of modern conservation biology.
One of the influences for me of Aldo Leopold was realizing that I wanted a life in conservation more than I was interested in a career in conservation. So the way it looks for me is living on a piece of land and caring for that land as best that I and my family can.
People who say that they're students of Leopold or disciples of Leopold or influenced by Leopold, maybe it's our responsibility to look at the whole Leopold.
As Leopold was growing up, the Midwestern landscape was changing dramatically. Its prairies were being plowed under, its forests cut, and its rivers and wetlands transformed by dams, dikes, and dredges.
Perhaps no one but a hunter can understand how intense an affection a boy can feel for a piece of marsh. I came home one Christmas to find that land promoters, with the help of the Corps of Engineers, had diked and drained my boyhood hunting grounds on the Mississippi River bottoms. My hometown thought the community enriched by this change. I thought it impoverished.
They lived at a time when the waterfowl along the Mississippi Flyway were being depleted. Market hunting was still an important force, and there was minimal concern about the decline of wildlife such as the bison and passenger pigeon, which were headed toward extinction when Leopold was a boy.
For one species to mourn the death of another is a new thing under the sun.
When Aldo Leopold was 14 years old, Theodore Roosevelt, already a leader in the emerging conservation movement, became president. Along with his friends, the forester Gifford Pinchot and the naturalist John Muir, President Roosevelt made the conservation of natural resources and the preservation of wildlands a national priority. Back then, if you were a young person interested in conservation, there was really only one profession you could enter, and that was forestry, a field established in large measure by Gifford Pinchot. And so Aldo Leopold was part of that first generation of American foresters. Many trained at Yale and then went off to work for the U.S. Forest Service, going to places that most of them had never even heard of. After graduating in 1909, Leopold's assignment was to go to the brand new Apache National Forest, in what was then not even a state, it was still the Arizona Territory. Well, he takes the railroad out to the Painted Desert in northeastern Arizona, gets off at Holbrook, one of the stops along the line, and looks south across the vast expanse of the desert. He could see a distant line of green on the horizon, and that was the Apache National Forest, created just recently by the signature of Teddy Roosevelt. Like other foresters, he was starting from the beginning, and so he got his proper ranger outfit, and he did have to go buy his own horse. And Aldo Leopold's first real job in the Forest Service was to go out and measure the Apache National Forest. One of the best-known passages of Leopold's writing describes an event that occurred at the very start of his career, when he saw a fierce green fire in the eyes of a dying wolf. Yet the full meaning of that experience eluded him for many years. Imagine this. Aldo's, how old is he? He's 22. 22 years old. Less than 2 weeks on the job, his first or second free Sunday. He comes out here, and here's where the green fire started. It's always struck me as entirely fitting that he started his career in the Forest Service with a moment that he didn't even fully understand. It would take 35 years for that moment to emerge in his own writing fully.
Only the mountain has lived long enough to listen objectively to the howl of a wolf. My own conviction on this score dates from the day I saw a wolf die. We were eating lunch on a high rim rock, at the foot of which a turbulent river elbowed its way. We saw what we thought was a doe fording the torrent, her breast awash in white water. When she climbed the bank toward us and shook out her tail, we realized our error. It was a wolf.
Leopold rose quickly through the ranks of the young Forest Service. There was minimal hierarchy at that time in the agency. All of these young foresters had a lot of responsibility. It's really quite extraordinary that just 3 or 4 years into his Forest Service career, this young guy from Iowa becomes supervisor of the Carson National Forest at the tender age of 25.
This is, the house that Aldo Leopold built back in 1912, and coming from Yale to northern New Mexico and just kind of seeing what you have here, that had to be a challenge for him as well. The cultural diversity here in northern New Mexico, rural communities, and the land use was all about grazing and then all about sheep and cattle, and so he had his hands full.
As a young forester, Leopold was in a precarious position. He He had to enforce new grazing regulations in communities that had long had unrestricted use of the public lands. Over the next decade, as Leopold traveled extensively throughout the Southwest, he became deeply interested in the changes that had taken place in the land, especially the impact of severe overgrazing.
The period that was really the hardest on the land, I think, was the 1880s, 1890s. And then after that, there was still overgrazing going on. It took a long time before people learned the limits of this landscape.
They never heard of ecosystem management, nor did I, 40 years ago. I mean, we were out here to conquer this country, not to make it better. I knew nothing about this country, but I had a large family and a small ranch, and it's self-defense. I had to figure out a way to grow more grass for the livestock and more wildlife habitat for the wildlife. I had to figure it out, so I did. My wife got a book about Leopold, and I began to read about him and see what he did, and I thought, boy, if I'd just read this 30 years ago, I could have saved a lot of time and effort, because he already knew all the things I was learning.
All right, so we're going to stop there.
You'd already done all the hard work.
Yeah. All right, so we'll get Anna's up here. Okay. Hey Matt, can you hear me? How come we're still on that camera? Hey Matt, can you hear me? Matt?
Actually, you walked across the
I just don't know why that, shouldn't that camera be over here now? You're working on it?
It's that one up there, right?
It's actually that one there.
Got it.
Got it now?
Yeah, I think that the one that's on right now is this one.
Is
I
that
think.
one right there,
Yeah, because
yeah.
it's got me on the edge. Oh.
That one should go to Granite Hills. We should be up on here, I think. So let's see.
Well, you're in, if
It's
you walked right there, you're in it.
What?
Look right there.
Ah, we need to
See,
adjust
it's that
the camera.
camera right
We need
there.
to adjust the camera.
To what?
Coming over this way again. It's somehow set back on this. It's
Well,
default.
it's that one.
No, it's at the lower.
Right.
He wants it as the big.
No, I don't. I can't remember. How was it yesterday? Do you remember? Let's
Well-
just get it over to this side and we'll go from there. Okay, so you're moving over. And if you could stand in, just sort of near that, yeah, right there. That's good.
On your dot.
There she is. Okay. Okay.
But it's not.
But they're going to see it like, they're going to see that view with the slides changing behind it. That's what they're going to see.
Yeah.
So we want to zoom out a little bit. Nope. And then that, something like that, I think.
Hey, Neville.
Hey, morning,
AE's
Matt.
here. Hey, can I ask a question?
Sure, please do.
I have students that would like to get moving on their expanded definitions.
Yes.
And you said you were going to give us kind of a shortened list for each chapter.
Yes, I
Even the
have
grade-
that. Can I email that over to you today? And then I also will be posting that under announcements on Blackboard as well. So it'll have the shortened list. It'll also have an example or two.
Wonderful.
I'll
Okay,
also
then I will be able to
I'll
pass
also
that on.
email that to you, Matt.
Thank you.
Okay, perfect. So we're going to go ahead and get started. I think Granite Hills will come on in just a moment, but I want to introduce Anna Garcia. I'm going to come stand over here with Anna. Oh, we're back to this one again.
It's the same one. You haven't changed it.
It's not going.
We have to hit the preview.
Yeah.
Hang on. Okay, so.
Today was perfect.
Were we
Yeah.
okay?
Yeah.
Send to Kodak.
Perfect.
Here we go.
There you go.
That's it.
Okay. But
Okay.
you know, once they figure out what button goes where, it's going to be so
Okay.
awesome.
All right. Sorry. Regroup. Thank you, Anna, for being so patient. So, as you probably know, Mojave Water Agency has been a great partner with our department and with Victor Valley College. A lot of the things you'll experience in this class, like geographic information systems, Mojave Water Agency started it with us and helped us and kind of gave us the brain trust behind things. We asked Anna to come in today to talk about science and how it's applied in the real world of natural resource management. So Anna's the senior hydrologist with Mojave Water Agency, and over to you, and thank you very much for coming.
Thank you so much for having me. Thank you. So let's just jump right on into this. Today we're going to talk about data. We're going to talk about the different types of data that Mojave Water Agency collects. We collect precipitation, which is snow and rain when we have it, surface water flow rates, information on well constructions, because we're looking down in the earth, we're talking about groundwater, so when you want to get down, you drill a well. Water level data that we get from measuring the water level in wells, and water quality data, which is samples that we collect from the wells to tell if there's arsenic or salts in the wells and stuff like that. So, several weather stations that get monitored throughout our service area. This is our service area here. It's about 4,900 square miles and extends down from the Cajon Pass area up here, Hesperia, Victorville, all the way out to Newberry Springs. This is the 15 going out to Las Vegas. We also extend out to Yucca Valley down here. And we end at the San Bernardino, LA County line. But through our service area, we have these different monitoring stations that you can actually click on our website and click on those little dots, and we'll take you to the data for each of those websites. This is what a weather station looks like. This is the weather station outside of our office. This is our office back here. Got a evap pan for measuring how evaporation happens, depending on temperature and wind conditions, stuff like that. We've got a little wind monitor, a little anemometer up here that spins around. And all that data is ported back through our website, and you can also see what's going on, how hot it is at our office anytime. This is a portable weather station that we're starting to deploy these out to our different water agencies, sister agencies out in our service. Again, catches precipitation, the little wind thermometer. We also do surface water monitoring. We have a cooperative agreement, a program with the United States Geological Survey that's been in place since 1991, I think it is. And so we monitor surface water flows when we have surface water flowing in the Mojave River. The river as it crosses our service area. And again, all these stations here, these little dots, these are available, the data is available through our website. You can click on the little dots and get the data. Here is a picture of Mojave staff training on surface water stream gauging at the Narrows. It's a USGS staff member. So they extend a measuring tape out across, and they have this little device. It's got a propeller on it. I don't know if you've seen it before. It's on a rod, and they make measurements going along the measuring tape, along the cross-section of the stream flow, and they're able to calculate how much stream flow is coming through there. There is a USGS staff member up at Deep Creek, up at our headwaters, doing the same thing, stream gauging. And this is pretty cool. Just found this picture recently. This is a deep stream gauging station in 1926. So that's what it looked like at that time. USGS staff member, and here's the tape going across.
That's awesome.
It is cool, right? The historical stuff. Here's a picture of what the Deep Creek stream gauging station looks like in this past February, when we actually had some storm flows coming through. So the USGS went out and they were measuring the stream gauge. They were stream gauging and taking some pictures to document the storm flows. Here's a USGS staff member a little bit down from there, measuring out in the water. Pretty exciting stuff. One of the other types of data that we collect is information on lithology, or what sediments you're drilling through when you install a well. And I have a little box here. I don't know if you guys will be able to pass it around. There's different sediments. You can have sands. You can have more clay materials. So as you're drilling down into the ground, you're collecting, a geologist or somebody will be collecting samples. If you guys want to slide it around, it's a little heavy. Take a look. So all that information gets recorded on data sheets and eventually will get ported into our database. This is an example of an E-log. So when you drill the hole, you have a tool that you can pour down into the hole and it'll take readings on different parameters going down through the aquifer. And all that data, electronic data, is collected and again put into our database. Here's a picture of a drill rig. I don't know if anybody's ever seen one. This is actually at one of our drill sites. So the drill tower, the drill rig, make it hold it ground where we're going to put a well. Here's a schematic. The drill tower. You got the drill stem. It's like a drill, like if you were drilling a piece of wood. It's just on a very large scale. And let's see, we've got the mud pit over here. So when you drill a well, this is a representation of our aquifer down here, where you get into the water table, and then our unsaturated zone up here. So what you want to do is you drill a hole, install a well casing, seal up as you're pulling out your pipe from around the well casing. Well casing might look something like this if you're drilling a monitoring well. And you want to backfill the hole so it doesn't collapse. The native sediment doesn't collapse in on your screen and break the well on the way out. And then you'd want to fill in the annular space with a bentonite, a seal, a clay seal, so that nothing from up top can get in and contaminate your well. So this cross section, a sliced ground of what a well might look like. There are different types of wells. You can have one well with multiple ports on one well casing, so you'd have more screens going down. You'd have to seal off screens. You're trying to monitor different zones. You could have several well casings in one hole, or you could have a cluster where you have several wells in separate holes right next to each other, monitoring different parts of the aquifer. We have about 800 monitoring wells in our network across our service area, and that's a lot. So that's good, because more data is good. So what we do when we go out and measure these wells, we use what's called a water level meter. Why don't you just hold this up so I don't drop it. So what you have is an electronic water level meter. It's like a big measuring tape. Drop it down the well, and when it hit water, it would measure the electrical conductivity, which would complete a circuit. It would sound. You could tell with the measuring markings, the gradations here. You could tell how deep the water is, and you would record that on a data sheet. Then that data would again get recorded in the database.
So it beeps as soon as it touches water?
Yes. Yes.
Thank you.
And another way you could do it, if you don't have enough people, you have 850 wells across a huge area, you can buy these transducers, and they're a little measuring device hang in a well. And it would sit there and collect the water level every 15 minutes, every hour, 4 times a day, whatever. If you wanted to collect data every minute, you could. Then somebody would go out, technician would go out in the field, hold the transducer up, disconnect it, put it in a little port, and download the data onto a computer, and then you can take that back to your office, and it goes back into the database. So, this hydrograph shows depth to water over time. And these wells are out near Barstow along the Mojave River. We've got examples of different water level readings over time. And this well is going down. So if this is my well, would I be happy or sad? I'd be pretty bummed because the water level is declining, which means my water level is getting deeper, more electricity to pump water to the surface, and so forth. This well just kind of drops down and goes back up. Drops down, goes back up. Drops down. Anybody have any idea why it might?
No water level
The water level is coming up,
From the
right?
rain?
Yes,
Oh, okay.
precipitation. So although the Mojave River normally looks like this, sometimes it can look like this, right? So that would be, this graph is recording storm flows as it's bringing the water table back up. And this well, pretty stable over time. So this record goes from about 1985 to probably 2013. We got this graph generated, but it's pretty stable. So you can have different wells showing different reactions in the over a huge area.
Is there an average depth of the wells, or are they all different?
It depends. It kind of depends on where you are along the river. Here in the Victor Valley area, the water level is relatively shallow, and so you don't need to set wells too deep to monitor that. And then if you set it too shallow, it can go dry if the water table does drop. Okay, so Mojave River storm flow. The Mojave can be mighty. So it was back, I think, 2005 when the storm flows go. You can see that house. Looking good. So we can also collect water quality samples from our wells. What we would do, go out, and again, all this data is available on our website. Link to it. Go to mojavewater.org. You can click through. It's a pretty user-friendly website. You can find all the data. So we have a water quality truck. It's got a reel with a pump on it. There's a different water level. The blue one, same idea as the red one that I have in class. You could set your pump down this well. As you're doing the well, you want to make sure that you're collecting groundwater that's representative of your formation. So if you haven't sampled it in 5 years or a year, that water that's sitting there in the can is going to be stagnant, basically. So you want to make sure that you're pulling fresh water in from the aquifer. So a pump pulling the water out, water's entering through this well screen. I don't know if you guys want to pick this or not. Take a look at it. So it's got little slots where groundwater would come in. And you want to be monitoring parameters like pH, electrical conductivity, temperature, salinity, so that as these parameters change and stabilize as you're pumping it, you can tell when you start fresh water from the aquifer.
Anna, I'm going to try could you Tammy, could you just show that, bring it back to Anna just a moment. I'm going to try to show them this, see if we can make this work.
Screen. Sorry. I'll bring it back.
So there you go, right about there. Oh, back this way, back. Do you see yourself there? There we go.
Yes.
You could just quickly tell them what they're looking at there.
So this is an example of a well. This part is a stainless steel screen, and that means there's these little slots in this screen. It's hard to see, but that would be where the water would enter the well to give you a representative sample from the aquifer, or how the water would get in there for you to measure water level. This part of the well is solid PVC, so if you've got it sealed from here to here in the borehole, in the hole, all you're going to see is where the water's coming in this screen zone.
And so up through that pipe is how it gets up 100 foot, 200 foot, and out
Yes,
to
the
get
surface.
used, right?
And that's where you would put your pump in, and it would have a tube that you could pump the water out of.
Does every well have that kind of pipe, or just the ones that you're doing this study that you're checking?
There's many different ways of perforating or having a screen. It's called stainless steel wire wrap, but you could also have slotted PVC, which is a special type of PVC where they've cut slots into it. If you had a steel well, they had this thing called a mill's knife, and it would actually, you put the casing in the hole, and you would put a tool in there that would shoot out a knife and make holes, slots into it. Okay, so we're water quality sampling. So they're pumping the well, the parameters have stabilized, and now they're filling their bottles. Have different types of bottles for different types of analyses, collecting their samples to the lab, and the lab will analyze them. Why do we do all the work? Because our goal is to collect data that we can turn into information and knowledge from science spaces. So again, data. We're just collecting data from all over the place, and it's getting put into our database, all this information, and basically we're awash in data. So one of the tools we can use to help us understand and interpret the data to turn it into knowledge is GIS. And GIS is a geographic information system. And basically what you can do with GIS is take your data and layer it on top of layers. The best thing I can compare it to from what I remember in school was overhead projectors where they had the transparencies and stuff like that. So you could layer different transparencies on yourself. And basically what it does, so here's this area again. And we're here. And our surface area is broken up into these management areas, management sub-areas. So it looks like puzzle. I can overlay my sub-areas onto our service area and kind of tell, okay, if I'm working on a well up in here, it's in the central sub-area. Another thing I can layer is geology. So all of these different colors, these different colors are rock. It's different types of rocks that geologists have identified as, I don't know, like a granite maybe with the pink, or different rocks. And if I look at this, it's like an abstract, but if I kind of look at it and squint, you can kind of make out a fabric of the rocks trending this way. And anybody know why that might be? Faults. Faults across our surface. We have a lot of faults. And if I turn to geology so I can see the faults a little bit better, I know I got the San Bernardino Mountains down here. The San Andreas Fault cuts between the San Bernardino Mountains and the San Gabriel Mountains over here, which separates the American Plate from the Pacific Plate. We've got the Garlock Fault here to define this part of the Mojave Desert Block, which is this whole area in here. And all these faults in here are part of the Eastern California shear zone. So whatever stress that the San Andreas accommodate, most of the rest of it is accommodated here by the Eastern California shear zone, as the rocks are, they're taking up the strain. And so that basically the San Andreas has caused, and the movement along the San Andreas has caused the shattering of the Mojave Desert Block. So again, this area here, I want to focus on water quality sampling that we've done here along the river. So again, remember back, we took our samples, packed our samples up, sent to the lab, and now a couple weeks later we get this huge data report, packet, paper, all of these, and that is a lot to go through. So what we do is, instead of just taking the paper report, big packet of ream of papers, we get the electronic file. So the lab will provide us an electronic version in Excel of what the data came out that's in the report. We're able to put that into our database. This is what our lab report looks like, a lot of numbers and analytes. I take that data, the Excel format, put it into our database, grind it up, and ask for a certain area of data to come back out. What I can do is I can lay it on top of a cross section, and this cross section is going from south to north. So this is along the river here in the Victor Valley. Here's the Mojave River Dam. The Narrows is up here, and all these dots represent wells that we have collected samples from. So if I slice along that line through the earth, and I lay out the wells on that slice that I've put in there and how deep they go, there's the different ports, the different screen zones for the different wells. What I can do next is I can lay on water quality data. This is showing arsenic. So all the little green circles mean that that port came up for arsenic, either non-detected, they didn't detect arsenic, or it was below the standard, the MCL, the maximum contaminant level. And yet I can see deeper areas where the circles are red. Those red circles represent areas of or ports that have arsenic above the standard, above the MCL. So I know that there's something happening between this zone and this zone down here. Not exactly sure what, but I can tell if I go deeper, I get arsenic in my samples. So if I'm going to set a well, I'm probably going to want to set it up here in the area that's green or non-detected or low arsenic. So I can take that information and I can turn it into a management tool to help us make science-based decisions on. We have different zones, like the green and the blue zone are okay as far as arsenic. If we start getting down in this orange and purple zone, we get arsenic too high, and we don't want to be pulling that out and having to treat it. Costs go up.
How deep is that?
Depends on where you are, roughly around that area. There's a lot of different things that can influence the mobilization of arsenic. It's naturally occurring, came from rocks that were on the San Gabriel Mountains when the Polona schist rock, that's out into the groundwater. Other thing, water quality data, take and make what's called a shift diagram, which is a shape that I have plotted the different cations and anions. So like in chemistry, if you have table salt and you put it in water, it dissolves. So it's broken up into the different sodium and chloride ions in the water. I can make these shapes, and I can plot a bunch of them. I can lay them on my cross section, my transect. If I zoom in, I can see the changes over time with these shapes. So the more wide the shape, the more skewed, the saltier the water is. The more narrow the shape, the more fresh the water is. I can also, at it in cross section, I can pull out and I can look at aerially over an area, and I can see again, the wider these red diagrams, kind of like 7th Street, matching up the different shapes to what this one is not like the others. So this one up here, this is more salty, which makes sense because it's out by a dry lake, by Harper Dry Lake. When you leave a glass of water on the nightstand and it evaporates, the white stuff left behind, that's the salt. That's happened over here at Harper Dry Lake over a long period of time. So again, why all the work? Because we want to turn that data into knowledge. We want to be able to make science-based decisions, not just decisions based on, well, I think it's salty by the dry lake. I have data, and I can look at it and know that it is salty by the dry lake. So I wouldn't want to put a recharge facility there on the dry lake. It's just going to take good fresh water, evaporate on the dry lake, and mix it with water that's already salty. Okay, so let's back. This is a picture from 1926 in the USGS they had their old historical gauging station out at Deep Creek. So they've actually USGS started working out here in 1909. So in some areas, for some of our wells, we have data that goes way back, which is great. There's a paper that they published in 1921 on desert watering holes across the desert. Here's another 1929. And here is a picture of O.E., the father of modern day hydrology. And this is him stuck in the sand in our Mojave River in our backyard, getting himself unstuck while USGS folks were out here collecting data across their service area. Here's a picture of a water sample. It's very different. Our rig right now. Again, we want to collect all this data and be able to turn it into information and knowledge so that we can make science-based decisions, because you can't manage what you can't understand. If you don't have the data to back it up, you're just arguing. You need the data. And in basin's asset liabilities, what you need to be able to make decisions about large projects. Do you put a well in 900 feet in a certain area because you know you're going to put in arsenic? Probably not. It's a lot of stuff you don't need to. And water across our region for a century. It just came out here in the early 1900s, and the scientific torch has been passed to all of us. Pretty cool, I think. Why would you water? You choose water industry. Man, you hear it. We're in a drought. It's all over the news. You know, there are problems that need to be solved, and there are jobs that are available. Water industry. It's necessary if you're going to build, if you're going to develop areas, and it can be types of jobs. Geologist job, hydrologist, environmental scientists, engineers, you can do health and safety jobs, database administration and analysis, all kinds of jobs, all jobs are available. Free wisdom that my boss came up with, but remember you get what you pay for. So high school, you want to think about what you want to be when you grow up, and that you're going to be many things throughout your career, most likely. You're not going to just pick one avenue on it. You can think about what you like. Do you like science? Do you like being outdoors? Can you work on a team? That is critical. I am an introvert, which means I would prefer to sit in my office and plot the data and look at the data, but I can't do it by myself. I work on a team with other people, and it takes a team of people. Here's that we were looking at. So if you think you want to be an astronaut, but you have a hard time working with people, and you don't like working in a confined space, that might not be the avenue that you take. That your focus, dedication, consistency, and fearlessness fail. And stay going. Persevere. Don't give up. If you have a keep going. Not even geology or hydrology. Keep going. There's some that you can click on for GRA, Groundwater Resource Association, our National Water Association, Brown and Caldwell. They have interesting articles, job posting, job availability across the country. There's some other organizations that I've been involved with over time: Inland Geological Society, South Coast Geological Society. Very much. Be happy to.
Okay. Over here on Highway, where they have the water up here, rocks. On Highway, a little bit down there that build up rock.
You can see in. They probably, maybe they've got a better facility, a newer facility now. I'm not sure about the rocks. Usually when we are out in the field and we come up on a well that they've been out here for a long time. People have been drilling wells since the 1900s. And we drop our tape down it and we can't get it down very far and it's not reading any water. A lot of times somebody has come by and thrown debris down it and you can't get into it.
Oh,
so I'm not sure if that's
probably what's going on up here, because they look abandoned.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right, Anna, thank you very much. We're hanging around a bit. We're going to see if we can make the technology work and get a question or two. One from let's try the AAE first. See if you guys have a question. So, Mr. Huffine, are you able to make that happen, please? Of course, you can't come up with a question, but
I can. I can give you a discovery. The problem that we're having with sound is the privacy in the receiving rooms has to be off or yellow, otherwise you get the cutout. So I think we solved that problem.
Okay.
Let me ask the students. Do you guys have any questions? Anybody? Yeah. Yeah. You want to come on up here? We have one student with a question. Okay, one thing I wanted to say while we're remembering is we've had wells drilled on our campus with those rigs. We have all of the water quality testing equipment to test the depth of water. So that's something that we can do on this campus. And we can go out in the field and do that on a block day. So those are all within our skill set. We can even monitor the stream flow down at the river. That's something that we can do. So thank you for including that. Yeah, the science and the data is really important. Do you have a question now?
Oh, I was just
Come on up. Come on up. Yep. Introduce yourself.
My name is Alex. I was just wondering if the pole that you were showing the water, the well, was that like the actual size, or is it like just made to like carry around?
Oh, the well, that was a demonstration model. I've been on sites up along the coast where the water was shallow enough that something like this would have worked, but generally not in up here in the high desert where it would now.
Can I just interject that the diameter, you're exactly right, because this diameter is about 1.5 inches, and I'm pretty sure on my domestic well at home, it goes down 450 feet, and it is this diameter.
You're covering it. Neville, you need to side more. You're covering it.
Oh.
Because the camera's
Sorry. So this intake is much bigger because you want to make the intake, what do you call this thing again?
The screen. The
screen bigger to cover where the water is actually sitting, where the aquifer. It's sitting in the sand particles. We'll be going into this in much more detail when we get to the water management aquifer
I have
chapter.
They're only about so big. Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you. Good question.
Any other questions?
Let's see at Granite Hills. We can't see them today, but they are online. Tiffany, do you guys have a question from that end by any chance? We can't see you, but we hear that you're out there in space. The technology well enough. I have a question in the meantime, and what is the potential for jobs in water, or water, and what sort of are these low-paying, high-paying jobs?
Well, I've got some slides here at the end of the presentation for anybody that wants a copy. You can take a copy of extra slides also. So different jobs in the water industry. There are positions, senior analyst and senior technician. You need a high school diploma and some training and an AA and maybe a bachelor's degree and 1 to 6 years of experience, and you can get one of these jobs over here. I have, through my education, I've gotten a bachelor's degree in geology and a master's degree in geology. There are all kinds of jobs. The drought that's going on right now, the Sustainable Groundwater Management Act, that the law that was passed back in 2014, that's created all kinds of jobs with Department of Water Resources, State Water Resources Control Board, looking for geologists, technicians. We are in a unique situation with this extended drought, so there's going to be more and more work coming up for geologists, engineers, technicians, if you like going outside in the field and going across the desert and measuring wells, or, this is the Sustainable Groundwater Management Act covers across California, so if you wanted to move to a different area, there's all kinds of jobs, and if you go back to that BC Water News website, there's a section on there where you can click and look at jobs in California, jobs in Florida if you wanted, all across the country. Let's see, here's some salaries that you could be making, and this slide is a couple years old, so I'm sure stuff has changed a little bit. But as a senior scientist, bottom of the range would be about 65,000, top of the range about 100,000. So you can take a look at this later on. There is work if you are interested.
I have a question about, because like in New Orleans, the opposite problem, massive amounts of water, so it would also need the same kind of person to work there too.
Yes.
Right? So that,
Yes.
Can I just interject that many people, think tank kind of people, think that this Groundwater Act that was passed in 2014 is the biggest thing that's happened to California. Because when you really drill down through climate change and all that, without water, we live in the whole state as a desert. And so the Groundwater Act basically said that each basin, we sit in a basin with all this water in aquifers below us in the sands, and basically said each aquifer is going to have to manage themselves. What the old game was, if I'm a farmer and I want to get more water for my almonds, then I just drill a deeper well than everyone else and get more water. And so, but that is all coming to an end. Every groundwater basin, and Anna was describing our basin to you, this whole flat area of the Mojave here, has to manage that sustainably. And that is going to promote, people think, more jobs and new kinds of jobs that we've ever seen. And statewide, this is considered the biggest movement change in our state at the moment, bar anything else. So it is incredibly exciting for the future.
And if I can throw a little plug in for the GIS class here at VVC, I don't know if any of you have taken it. I work with folks at the agency that have their background in GIS and are experts, and it's amazing what they can do. And I'd be just working on a map with them, and I'd be, oh, well, can't you just move that line? I don't understand. Why? How hard is that? Well, I took the class last fall, and I was like, well, it's pretty hard to just move a line sometimes. But and I can't make the nice maps that were up here. I need their help to do it. But if I am working on a project and they're gone for the day, or I'm at home, I know enough now to be able to make the basic figure that I can take them when I get back to the office on Monday morning and be like, hey, this is what I'm going for. Can you build me something like this? It is such a powerful tool. And I didn't have that, we didn't have this when I was going to school. It wasn't a requirement, and I just would encourage anybody, if you're going to go into any sort of resource management, if you can take a GIS class, I would strongly encourage you to do so.
Okay, any other questions? It doesn't seem as though we're getting anything from Granite. So Matt, do you have any more questions on your end? Mr. Huffine? Okay, so what I would just also...
Can you hear me?
Go ahead.
Oh, okay. I just didn't know if you could hear me or not. Could you go back some slides and kind of lay out the geography of the Mojave Desert? For those in the know, it's a great slide, but for those not in the know, it's so much information. And then kind of lay the foundation of what the Mojave Water Agency does in reference to those geological features. So you laid out, there you go. Yeah, you want to address that.
Yeah, so
there's a lot of information there that insiders know, but outsiders get lost in.
Okay, so here's our service area. The green outline is our service area. The Mojave River, it's not highlighted on this figure, but you can kind of make it out. It extends up across our service area to the north and then heads out to the northeast. And it actually goes out over here to Soda Dry Lake after it passes through Afton Canyon. The Mojave River actually emerged from the San Bernardino Mountains down here about 1.5 to 2 million years ago. It took a long time for the river to fill up this deep bowl that was over here at the base of the mountains, be able to fill it in with sand so that the river could get out and head out to continue its course. At one point in time, it actually came out and it discharged over here to Harper Dry Lake. That was about 40 to 45,000 years ago.
And that's close to Barstow, right?
That is northwest of Barstow. I don't know if anybody knows where Kramer is. It's out towards that way. It also, the Mojave River, after there was faulting and all these faults upwind, causing the river to change course at point and come in here and make a Lake Mannix, which was over here past Barstow, past Calico, and it was a big lake here. It dammed itself at Afton Canyon, and at one point it finally breached Afton Canyon. And I don't know if you've ever driven out there. Afton Canyon is the Grand Canyon of the Mojave. It's beautiful. The river breached it. It cut its way down through Afton Canyon. Initially, it was pretty rapid, and then it kind of slowed a little bit in the downcutting. But eventually, it made its way over here and formed Lake Mojave, which included Soda and Silver Dry Lake. If anybody's ever been out past Baker on the 15th, if you're heading out to Vegas, north and south of Baker, there's a couple of dry lakes. And the Mojave at one time filled in that whole area. That was Lake Mojave. Actually, a couple of times through history, it filled in that area. And then it continued on to Silurian Dry Lake up to the north. But what grew with Mojave, predecessor of the Mojave, these faults. The faulting tectonics is what has driven so much of our Mojave Desert block, which is this triangle. It cuts off here, but it's a triangle-shaped block. And the San Andreas is a key player. The San Andreas the modern-day San Andreas came into existence about 5 million years ago, and it broke along these plates, the North American and the Pacific plates, and in this area, in the Cajon Pass, we have these high mountains on one side, San Bernardinos, and on the other side, the San Gabriels. And the San Andreas basically got stuck in that junction between those two mountains, and that is what popped up that caused the transverse ranges to rise. So the San Andreas predates the Mojave, because the Mojave didn't start emerging from the San Bernardinos until about 1.5 to 2 million years ago. And the motion along the San Andreas, which is a right lateral fault, which means if you're standing on one side and looking across to the other side, stuff on the other side is going to look like it moved off to the right. So the San Andreas separates the two plates, and it moves, and it is a huge, long fault. It goes all the way up across California and out into the ocean. And that strain of those two plates grinding past each other, that fault can't accommodate all of the strain. So part of it, a little part, is accommodated here as the plates are ripping. This block, this Mojave Desert block is trying to turn. So you got these rocks they're not going to glide past one another. So they're just getting locked up, and they're breaking along planes that are parallel to the San Andreas. So that's the Eastern California shear zone. Does that kind of help, Matt?
Yeah, absolutely. In fact, we spent last year when I taught the high school version of this course, we spent almost a whole month on just the geology of the Mojave, and you summed it up in that picture there. Could you?
Can I just?
Could you? Okay.
All these
yes?
faults, if you have Google Earth, or if you have the Esri products for GIS, you can download this stuff off of our website. You could download the green shapefile showing our boundaries. You can download the faults in our service area. In addition, you can, I believe it comes from the California Geological Survey. We just downloaded onto our stuff and are sharing it from our website. You can download the faults layer for the whole state of California if you want. And you click on the little pink line, and it tells you what fault it is and gives you more information on it. So just as a resource, if you guys are interested.
Thank you.
So I have a really quick question that people are probably wanting to ask, but are like maybe a little bit embarrassed today. We're talking about this Mojave River, but I don't see any water. Where's the water? What's going on here?
The water is underground. It is, it's not like a river in a cavern underground. The basins are filled with alluvium, so with sediment, with grains of sand, like you saw in that box, with gravel, with boulders, with clay layers. So the water is when it's in there, it's in the spaces between the rocks. So the sand grains don't actually absorb and contain the water. The water is flowing through the pore spaces, and that's where the Mojave River is. A long time ago, It would have been awesome to be out here. I wish I could have been here when the Mojave was making its way down to Harper Lake and filling in Harper Lake and filling in Lake Mannix. You drive out to Barstow now, and I'm driving out to 15, and usually when I've got guests with me, I'm pointing out, you see these green sediments on either side of the freeway. Those are lake deposits from Lake Mannix. If Lake Mannix were here, we would be underwater right now. And how awesome would that be? Just amazing.
Okay, so I think we've got a little bit more time. Do you have any questions from that end, Matt?
I had them as she was addressing that. Could you address the direction of the river?
The river starts here at the mouth. It has its mouth at the San Bernardino Mountains, and it extends to the north and then bends out to the northeast. So it's one of the north-flowing rivers in the state.
Yeah, one of the planet's few north. There's less than 50 of them, and usually when you have north-flowing rivers, it's a sign of recent tectonic activity, because rivers tend to want to flow that way. They flow that way when they're forced to. So how old? You say about 4 million years old. This river.
River north emerged about 1.5 to 2 million years ago. A long time prior to that, before the San Bernardinos and the San Gabriels popped up, this area drained out to the ocean. So if you can imagine, it was drained down past the Cullen Pass out to the ocean. And they have sediments from the Lake Mannix area. If you drill deep enough, you can find indications in the sediment of the river, evidence of the river having flowed to the south, pebble imbrication and so forth, indicating flow to the south.
Can you explain what
to provide it?
It's finding its way. It got actually, when it emerged from the mountains that popped up, so you got this high elevation here in the San Bernardino, so the drainage wants to go to the lowest elevation. It actually got itself stuck here along the Iron Mountains up here by Barstow. It carved down into the bedrock, and because of the low amount of flow in it, the infrequency of storm flows now, it can't get out. So it's carved itself into the bedrock. There's no more sand for it to wear its way out of, and there's not enough water for it to do so, and that's forced it to the northeast. And also Death Valley, which is the lowest spot in the continental U.S., which minus 282.
200 something.
200 something, maybe 242. That is up here. I think it's about, I can't remember how far it's north. Drainage, if water is going to want to flow, path of least resistance to the low point. So,
and I've got
I believe they call that.
Go ahead, man.
I believe they call that Lake Manly when Mojave did flow into it once.
Yes.
And to give context to timing, the San Bernardino Mountains started to pop up about 4 million years ago. That's about the time that we started to see the species hominid start to show up in Africa. So this whole pattern, this Mojave has been in development about the time that our species has been in development, according to the fossil record. So just to give it a perspective.
Okay, thanks, you guys. We're going to continue on this end. I've got one more question. Could you, text, hey, hopefully you're still online. Could you show us Yeah, and the idea is that because you know what we're talking about here, the river Mojave starts, the way we know that by river starts up here at the top of Deep Creek Road. Got the big flood control, we're going to talk about that up there. And so we're just right at the source. What I was trying to get at is the watershed what the rains and the snow that land in the mountains eventually come down through the sediments, and they're what recharge, fill our groundwater basin. But all our water comes from pumping. That washcloth today came from the ground. We're recharging that from our water. We happen to have a nice watershed, a lot of land, especially here with, therefore, good management, science-based management from the Mojave. We've got a very stable groundwater. Unlike other parts of the state, fighting more action. Kind of common. Thank you guys.
That's really where it is, you know.
Right.
And I.
So that this class is that's a great question because it kind of gives it and one up there and then that time talk about this time. What is geology? Then we have a lower one goes down in rocket in but you'll have getting a bus, the high school, and everything. You guys saw that. They're extra time, but try to make you can make that. Yeah. And I'll also. Yeah, yes, you will. So any lecture will get videoed like this. The guest lecture will get videoed, and then it'll also be loaded. Actually, in fact, loaded ready in the morning to get the video on back. So you'll see guest lecture, science applications that I came up with, and I want to thank you very, very much for being part of this experience. Okay, one more question.
Have a well, how does someone have it?
Actually, there is. Register online to their website, and they will see out to get us. Have it analyzed, provide you with results, and they're not going to, tell you, oh, you can't use your well anymore. They're not going to come in and regulate you. But if you figure out how to buy
go as far as polls, as far as our like that.
I don't and it's not all of it naturally out of the floor that are sediment. Rocks broke down, became sediment. That stuff is also, and that leaves naturally occurring, that's occurring arsenic and naturally occurring. And 6, these are drinking water, so you gotta watch. I'm pretty sure
All right, well, thank you very much.